never started an introduction like this, but my name is not David Kish. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Kornelsen, and I'm the Associate Dean of the Arts here at Metropolitan State University of Denver. And I count myself lucky to have known Jerry and worked closely with him. I was chair of the music department for 5 years when he was on our faculty. And I'm pleased to be your host for this afternoon. I'm so happy that you are all here to join us. I'd like to start with a reading from Psalm 22. And I'm going to read the first part of the psalm, which is a cry for help and appropriate for somebody who's gone through a painful circumstance. And so this is the first part I'm going to read today. My God, why have you forsaken me, and are so far from my cry and from the words of my distress? Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but you do not answer. By night as well, but I find no rest. Yet you are the Holy One, enthroned upon the praises of Israel. Our forefathers put their trust in you. They trusted, and you delivered them. They cried out to you and were delivered. They trusted in you and were not put to shame. All who see me laugh me to scorn. They curl their lips and wag their heads, saying, He trusted in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him if he delights in him. Yet you are he who took me out of the womb and kept me safe upon my mother's breast. I have been entrusted to you ever since I was born. You were my God when I was still in my mother's womb. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, and there is none to help. I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart within my breast is melting wax. My mouth is dried out like a pot sherd. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth, and you have laid me in the dust of the grave. Packs of dogs close me in, and gangs of evildoers circle around me. They pierce my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them. They cast lots for my clothing. Be not far away, O Lord. You are my strength. Hasten to help me. Save me from the sword, my life from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, my wretched body from the horns of wild bulls. I will declare your name to my brethren. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce to you close friend and fellow trumpet player, David Hickman.
Like Jerry, I'm a trumpet player. And I first met Jerry in the fall of 1968 when I started as a freshman at UC Boulder. And we sat together in the orchestra section. He was starting his master's degree. And even though, you know, Jerry, I see so many faces out here, by the way, that I know studied with Jerry. I never formally studied with Jerry, but he was certainly a very big mentor to me. I think he saw this freshman boy from Nebraska with corn in his ears, and he always called me Hick. And I think part of that was a nickname, but part of that also was because I was a little, you know, guy from Nebraska who had never seen the world. And he had been to Boston and studied at the New England Conservatory, and I considered him a, you know, man of the world who had studied with Roger Voisin and all these famous people. So we became friends immediately. And he took an interest in me, which I found really surprising, because most trumpet players, particularly ones that are older than you, they could care less about any other trumpet players. Everything's about themselves, you know. But Jerry was always supportive, helped me get started with some freelancing, and, you know, learn to you know, create a professional career. When I think of Jerry, I mainly think of you know, his sense of humor. I still, just standing backstage with my trumpet in my hand, reminded me of getting ready to go on stage to play with the Denver Municipal Band, you know, doing a Mendez solo or something. And he'd always be back there before the concert with those glasses up on his head, you know, that smile kind of sauntering over to you, you know, hey, heck, how you doing, you know? And, but the sense of humor, we all know it. And I got out that little book he published called The Irreverent Dictionary of Musical Terms. And I found a few that I wrote out here that I think kind of sum up Jerry's humor. So these are musical definitions. Retard, conductor. Dominant chord, when the brass come in. Circle of fifths, sharing the firewater on the bus. Glissando, what string players do when they ain't sure where to stop on the next note. Just intonation. There just isn't any justice in respect to intonation, but if there were, the first thing we'd shoot the clarinetist. Molto dim, conductor. Morindo, fading away as one's pulse during a 3-hour opera rehearsal. Marceau, first name of every French tune ever written. Tromba, of course you know he had Tromba publications. The swellest guys in publishing. No, really, I mean it. These guys are okay by me. The best straight shooters there are. And then in parentheses, sorry about that, folks, but you have to throw this stuff in if you entertain the faintest hope of ever receiving any royalties from these jerks. In 1985, we started Summit Brass, which is a large ensemble that now performs here in Denver every year. And we started off in the mountains up in Keystone. And Jerry was one of the original members of the executive board. And we, of course, were trying to do some fundraising. So after we got our nonprofit tax-exempt status, you know, we're trying to get the first few bucks coming in. And Jerry told me about a person in Boulder, Colorado that we needed to go see. So he set up an appointment. So I live in Phoenix, so I flew up. And I wanted to have something that we could show this person that, you know, about us. So I had these brochures printed up, and they were kind of fancy. They had a fancy fold to them and everything. And I took them to the printers, and they just seemed like they were taking forever. So finally, on the way to the airport, I literally stopped, picked up a box of these things, and as they showed them to me there, I take one out. Couldn't believe it. You know, when you unfolded it, it was upside down. It looked fine on the outside, it was upside down on the inside. So I thought, oh heck, you know. So I left them in my trunk, but I thought, well, I'll take a few, because at least we'll have something to show. So Jerry picked me up at the airport, and we made our way up to Boulder. And we were out on the patio of this nice lady and had a little cup of tea or whatever. And Jerry introduced me. Of course, I was very nervous. I was young. I was my first fundraising opportunity. And I had these brochures that I was kind of ashamed of. I didn't even want to show them to anybody. Jerry, of course, saw them. And so we started talking, and this woman said, well, do you have any written materials about Summit Brass that I could have? And I said, well, I got this brochure, you know, but it was a little printing mistake, so I showed her that it was printed upside down, and Jerry just grabbed that out of my hand and said to her, well, it's got a fancy fold, it goes like this, and it does this little magic act, you know. And we all started laughing immediately. It just totally cracked the ice, you know, and made the situation much more comfortable. And another story about Jerry. In 1977, I was teaching at the University of Illinois, and I hosted the International Trumpet Guild convention they had that year. And Jerry was performing a cornet solo, his favorite solo, Facilita. And I have a tape of that recording somewhere. But I was sitting in the audience, you know, he's going along through all these fast variations, gets to the final variation, which is all triple tongue stuff, and he had to have probably the fastest triple tongue on the planet. But he's going along lightning speed, and it's just going great, and all of a sudden we hear this loud clicking sound, and he stops playing. And the pianist stopped, and everybody, you know, looked. He reaches down on the floor and picks up one of these little valve buttons, came unscrewed and fell off on the floor. That's what that clicking sound was. So he's trying to screw it back on. He says, "Did I mention this cornet was made in 1886? He just seemed to always know how to cut the tension and to, somehow, I think, made you feel that things don't always have to be so serious, you know, and he enjoyed life. He's probably one of the most unique individuals that any of us ever knew. Unique personality, certainly a caring and sharing person, not a jealous bone in his body, and always helpful. That's all I have to say, but I want to play a little thing.
Next, I'd like to read a prayer attributed to St. Francis, which the family has told me this is the way Jerry lived his life. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. This is the way Jerry lived his life. David has laryngitis, which is why he's not here today. He is here today, but this morning he emailed me at 7:05 and said, what was I doing at 4 o'clock? And so, fortunately, I was free. I'm going to tell a very quick story, then I'm going to read some cards and letters. Every semester, commencement comes around, and Jerry would always bring the brass players to play Pomp and Circumstance many times for 1,500 graduates all to make their way into the arena. And he would also, the brass would always play the Star Spangled Banner with a singer, and I would conduct, quote unquote. So one time I was got delayed and missed the rehearsal. It panicked me. But Jerry said, oh, it's no problem, we rehearsed without you. And I told him the joke, you know, how many conductors it takes to change a light bulb. Who cares? Nobody watches the conductor. He got a chuckle out of that. Cards and letters have been pouring in from friends, colleagues, close friends, former students, and I'm going to read these to you. And Shane and Marguerite and Pam are going to help me in some cases where I may not have jotted down the relationship. But the first one is from a former student from many years ago who I believe is here today, Jeff Dodge, who said, Jerry meant so much to me. He was my best trumpet teacher, friend, mentor. My visits with the two of you, this is to Pam, were filled with laughter and love. It was a stroke of luck that he came into my life and all that came with him. You and your family, Ma and Pa Endsley, the fabled limble rides to the airport, Dunkin' Donuts for the donut shop close to your flute studio, on weekly trips to Denver for lessons. This is a good one. Jerry misplacing the wedding ring during your ceremony. Cat tricks on the living room floor with Ralph. McDonald's, Coca-Cola, bald tires on the 57 Chevy, and lots of pool downstairs. There's not a day that goes by at some point that a memory gets triggered of Jerry. Barbara Sellers, a colleague at the Denver Center Theater. I just heard the news and wanted to send you my love and support as you say goodbye to Jerry. He was truly the kindest, most generous person I've ever met. Please know my heart is with you, and I will always celebrate the time I spent with each of you. I could not have done my job in Denver without Jerry's help and support. He will remain with everyone whose life he touched. I send you my love. And Alan Dean, trumpet player from the St. Louis Brass Quintet and professor of trumpet at Yale, said, this is an email to Shane, Jerry's son. I've been thinking a lot about you and your family since your dad's passing. It has taken me a couple of weeks to absorb his loss, even though I knew it was coming. He was such a wonderful friend over the many years in Colorado, always there with a smile, a joke, and often a new toy. From publishing a bunch of my quintet arrangements to making adapters, to get my flugel mouthpiece into a trumpet, he was so helpful and talented in so many ways. We had many a conversation about the good old days. He loved the trumpet, but mostly I respected his love of music. I remember the day he drove up to Boulder when the St. Louis Brass was playing there. He couldn't stay for the concert, but he just drove up to say hello and hang for a few minutes. So much like Jerry. And this is from Kathy Brannigan, colleague and friend. Dear Pam, thank you for your note. I'm heartbroken for all of you. Jerry was larger than life in my mind, and I know that you can't imagine life without him. No one can imagine life without Jerry. Even when he was sick, he made us all smile and feel good around him. From his nephew, Mario Bartoluzzi. Dear Uncle Jer, you are ever in my thoughts, and as a matter of fact, even in my mannerisms. Just Sunday, Anna and I played in church. Anna on flute and I played piano. When we practice, I have to remind her about key signatures, or else the first G she sees in A major, she will play as a natural. So we went up to play the last hymn. I glanced out at it and said quietly to her, all right, C major, can you handle that? She poked me with her flute, but later chuckled, asking if that's how my dad talks. I said, actually, I think that's Uncle Jer. Dear Uncle Jer, what a major part of my life you've been, even though we seldom speak. As I walk through my day, there are always memories that pass through of you and my formative years with you. And Herm Lagali, brother-in-law. I hit it off with Jerry the moment I met him. I liked his humor and irreverence, and was always impressed by his talent. My thoughts and my prayers are with you and him. And from his niece, Rachel, I'm so very sorry, Aunt Pam, so very sorry to hear about Jerry passing away. I know no words can fully comfort someone who has lost someone who is wonderful as Uncle Jerry. I wish that I could give up some of my strength to get through each day, and especially the hardest of days. Uncle Jerry provided so many smiles and laughter with his stories and wanting to give $1 to have me do something. To just simply being himself put smiles on mine, and I'm pretty sure everyone's faces. I love you, Rachel. And this is from another niece, Amara. Dear Aunt Pam, Graham sent me the news about Uncle Jerry. I'm so incredibly sorry. It breaks my heart to hear how he is doing. I wish we could be there for you. You have a big spot in my heart, always seeming to make me laugh and smile. Just remember that Uncle Jerry won't be in pain anymore, and he will never leave you. He will always be with you in your heart. That's how I managed to get through losing my mom. I know it's not the same due to no two cases being the same, but the pain is overwhelming, and that is a feeling only those who experience the deepest sorrows know. If you ever want to talk, even if it's about the cats or the weather, you can call me. I love you so much. Stay strong, Aunt Pammy. Ariel White, a recent former student. Dear Pam and family, you and Jerry have always meant a lot to us. The news of Jerry's is very sad and tragic, and our thoughts and prayers will be with you at this time. For me personally, you and Jerry have played a huge part in my life, and I wouldn't be where I am without you. If you ever need me in this time, feel free to call me. I'm very sorry for your loss. With greatest sympathy and love, Ariel. Diane Lenachek Hutchinson, we are all so sorry for your loss. So many in the music community and beyond are grieving with you, Pam. Our world has dimmed with the passing of such a wonderful man. His dedication, his amazing sense of humor, the joy he brought so many with his music, his friendship and his love. So many things that made Jerry unique and one of a kind. We've been so blessed over the years to have had him, his influence in our lives with his special brand of fun. I woke up last night with the thought that Jer is no doubt with Mom and Dad, and that those two jokers are probably already sharing martinis and playing duets, sorry. It's, you never know with Jerry. Debbie Schrussel? Jerry was 1 in a million fellow. He was talented and ready to take on anything, and he excelled all that he attempted. His quick and dry sense of humor were appreciated by all, and oh, how he was loved by the Lenacheks. He will be missed by many, not only in the musical community, but in the hearts of many who knew him personally. You are all very much in my thoughts and prayers. Much love, Debbie. And this is Mark Denicus. Principal horn of the Denver Symphony and Colorado Symphony, right? Dear Pamela, I've just heard that Jerry passed away. I've missed you both for so long, and now Jerry is gone. I remember happy evenings at the Golden Ox with Ed and Elaine, you and Jerry, and me and Marilyn. Fillets you could cut with a fork and liberally poured dewars on the rocks. Ed was the icon I wanted to be, and Jerry took over in all ways after Ed left. We did those 20-hour recording sessions for Boulder's Dinner Theater. My chops would be aching, and I was stressing over the next DSO thing. Jerry kept on plugging through, laughing at any little glitch, and then fixing it fast and charging on. Even during the worst of my chop problems, we had some happy times in his shop, concocting the weirdest horn mouthpieces ever made, trying to trick the demons away. When I knew my symphony time was over, he said, "You still have plenty of good work to do, Mark, and you still have plenty of good grins going for you, too." He taught me how to torment cats. I will never remember a time together he did not make me laugh. I am crying now, Mark. And Susan McCullough. Horn teacher at University of Denver. Dear Pam and family, I can't tell you how sorry I am to hear of Jerry's passing. He was such a great man and was one of the most positive people I have ever known. He always had a smile on his face and made others smile. I could tell that you and he were soulmates, and you two were an inspiration to me as an example of what a great marriage should be. Jerry was a musical icon in Denver and will be missed by everyone. I hope that you and your family will be comforted by the many great memories you have made. Oh, Susan McCullough is a horn player at DU, according to my next piece of paper. All right, and Paul Francis? Fiorina. Paul Fiorina? Ballet dancer, and he's here. So, dear Pam, Marguerite, and Shane, you have been in my prayers with the passing of your husband and dad. You know how very special he is to the arts community, and his talent is missed. We still have the Peter and the Wolf online as we got to work together, and what a joy it always was. A great man, maestro, and art educator that made Colorado #1. And Frank and Mary, what they said, former principal trumpet in the Philadelphia Orchestra, 1975 to 95. Mary and I send you our deepest sympathy on the loss of your husband and father. I've met only a handful of people who so inspired me, musically and intellectually, as Gerald did. He had such great qualities that I never felt I had spent enough time with him. I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. He was a fine gentleman and a marvelous with a marvelous sense of humor. I've been sitting here listening to his solo CD and loving every note he played. I'm sure we are all better people for having known him. And I'm going to save one email for near the end, and I'm going to end with a letter from Mayor Michael Hancock, Mayor of the City of Denver. Mrs. Pamela Endsley and family. Dear family, Mary Louise and I were saddened to hear the passing of your beloved husband and father, Gerald Endsley. He was a valued colleague and an asset to the city and county of Denver and the music community. Gerald was always available to partner with community to enhance the quality of events with the services of the Denver Municipal Band. His warm personality, enthusiasm, talent, and willingness to serve made all good programs great. Our city is indebted to Gerald for the commitment and integrity that he demonstrated in the management of the band. He truly will be missed. There are no words that can lessen the pain that you are experiencing at this difficult time. There is comfort in knowing that love is forever. Memories cannot be taken away, and the life you shared was a large part of the man he was. My prayer is that of comfort and peace with you, will be with you. Respectfully, Michael B. Hancock, Mayor. Next, we have a recording. I'd like to introduce to you Osamu Hirakawa from the Takayama Wind Orchestra. Takayama is a sister city. Takayama? Takayama. Sorry. I just got conscripted today, so apologies for that. Sister city of Denver, and I believe that Jerry took to visitors there many times, and you came here, so let's welcome them.
My name is Osamu Hirakawa from Denver sister cities, Takayama, Japan. Okay? I came here this afternoon from Takayama. I am Vice President of Takayama Denver Friendship Association and also the Director of Takayama Wind Orchestra. We call Jerry as Jerry-chan. Jerry-chan with meaning affinities. Okay? Jerry-chan and I met for the first time in 1993 because of his big support with conducted Takayama Wind Orchestra perform tour in Denver next year with success. Inspired by this visit, exchange between two cities became increasingly active. Okay? Since then, we visit Denver as Takayama Wind Orchestra as 3 times. Furthermore, he helped us every time we visit as Takayama Nishi High School Band, Flute Orchestra, Children's Choir, and Culture Association. In addition, Jerry-chan and Pam visited to Takayama twice and gave up opportunities to interact with local band and schools. The sister city relationship between city of Denver and city of Takayama become 55th anniversary this year. 5 years ago, at 50th anniversary ceremony, Jerry-chan played fanfare with Takayama's trumpet player Makito. I was expect for second performance of them this year. I really lament over his loss and the fact that we can't listen to his trumpet play anymore. At Jerry's memorial service, I have received letter of appreciation from Takayama City and Takayama Wind Orchestra. So I will read them in Japanese, and my daughter Ray will translate them in English. She is a senior student at MSU Denver, and Jerry introduced her people associated with university admission. In Japanese. 感謝状、ジェラード・エンセレー様。あなたはデンバー市と高山市の市民レベルで音楽と芸術文化交流を進め、両市の国際理解と友好促進に寄与されました。その功績をたたえ、高山市民を代表して心から敬意と感謝の意を表します。日本国高山市長国島道弘。
So I will translate about it. So, certificate of appreciation. On behalf of the entire citizens of Takayama, I am deeply honored to present this certificate to Mr. Gerald Endsley for helping to promote international understanding and friendship through sharing of music and performing arts among the citizens of Denver and Takayama. With heartfelt appreciation and gratitude, April 16, 2015, Michihiro Kunishima, Mayor of Takayama. behalf of the entire member of the Takayama Winds Orchestra, we would like to extend our deepest and most heartfelt condolences to you and our family on Mr. Gerald Endsley's death. Jerry was such a fine musician, and we are honored to have had opportunities with him to share enthusiasm on music. We had shared not only music but also close friendship for over 20 years. The following is a quotation of what he used to say. It has been said that music is the common language of humankind. Certainly, while there are many different kinds of music around the world, the universe desire for human beings to express themselves in ways that word alone cannot convey, emphasize the shared inner spirit of mankind, which does bind us together as one world people. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the Takayama Winds Orchestra and all the people of Takayama for inviting us to share and further develop these wonderful bonds of friendship. As you can imagine, Jerry was the embodiment of what music can offer, and we learned so many things from him, too many to mention. Even millions of words are not enough to express our gratitude to him for what he taught us. We still and will love Jerry, and he will be remembered in each of our hearts. And please remember our thoughts and with you and your family at this most difficult time of loss. We do look forward to seeing you again, either in Denver or Takayama, when time has healed wounds in your heart. Until then, very best wishes to you. Yours sincerely, Keiji Kosaka, President of Takayama Winds Orchestra, and Makito Ogaya, Director General.
Thanks so much for taking care of us. We miss you. Jerry-chan, さよなら.
At this point, I'd like to introduce to you two people who will both provide tributes to Gerald Endsley. The first is Robert Shaklee, close friend and godfather, and the second is Shane Endsley, Jerry's son.
Hi, my name is Bob Shaklee, and I think I was selected because I'm the only non-musician in the whole room. I'm pleased to be able to talk about my good friend Gerald Endsley. Jerry had only wanted the simplest of ceremonies to mark his passing. Someone reading Dust to Dust, a song or two were more than adequate for him. Pam and the family tried to be true to his wishes. However, the world is filled with people such as I. We feel the necessity to celebrate Jerry, or as a lot of people knew him, Mr. Tromba. In olden times, Jerry would have been described as a character, a worldly person of wide knowledge who could tell a good story with the best of them. Unfortunately, I'm not in his class, so it won't be as entertaining. He was someone for whom the usual or ordinary was never enough. And when the usual and ordinary was seen through his eyes, it somehow became quite special and with an unusual sparkle. Jerry's stories would usually contain that sparkle, and I think, as we've heard today, never failed to entertain. Of course, his stories spared no one, not even himself. I'd like to break for a minute and just express my gratitude to Mr. Hirakawa for his kind words about Jerry. The Takayama Wind Ensemble has come to Denver many times and has played with the Denver Municipal Band. And at one time, Jerry went, and Jerry and Pam and a few musicians went to Japan, and they were so kind and generous to Jerry and Pam and the musicians when they were in Japan. Jerry could not ever stop talking about how kind and generous they were. So I wanted to say thank you for being part of this. With Jerry, we must start with a simple brass instrument. It's about 7 feet long. It's got a mouthpiece on one end and a bell on the other. It's not, at that point, being a very musical piece of equipment. Over the time, it had holes drilled in it, it had crooks made for it, it had valves attached to it, and on and on and on until it finally ended up as the trumpet that Jerry would play. Playing was only the beginning of his fondness for the trumpet, but playing was his introduction to something of importance that would captivate him to the end of his life. One of his early teachers was Ed Lenichek, who played first trumpet in the Denver Municipal Band and later conducted the band. Jerry was to follow Ed with the DMB. Jerry was to follow Ed with these roles with the DMB, and his leadership created a stronger, more vibrant institution for Denver residents. After graduating from East High, Jerry went to New England Conservatory in Boston, where he studied with Roger Voisin, who was principal trumpet at the Boston Symphony. If you're familiar with Roger, his sound was from the French school and not, shall we say, the German tradition. I'm not sure if this was the basis of Jerry's appreciation of the traditional differences in sounds produced by orchestras and musicians from different parts of Europe, but he certainly enjoyed the variety of these differences. For example, while he was able to hear the great Berlioz interpreter Charles Munch live in Boston as a college student, his favorite version of The Damnation of Faust was one conducted by, as he would say, a mad Russian, Igor Markevich, with the French Lamoureux Orchestra, and again, as Jerry would say, 4 frog singers. By which he meant 4 singers whose voices Berlioz would have had in mind when writing the piece. Every time I hear the recording, it brings back the excitement and pleasure of the first hearing in Pam and Jerry's basement on Bel Air Street. For me, it started a long-time love for the vocal and orchestral music of Berlioz. And to complete the circle, Callie, who is Shane's wife, recently sent us a short video of Mahalia, Shane's daughter and Jerry's granddaughter, listening to the spinning wheel song from the same recording while sitting in a rocking chair in Georgetown. By the way, the recording has been reissued and is available, as Jerry would say, as if he sold it. Jerry's friends from Boston stayed with him throughout his life and provided the fodder for many stories. Al Briggs of the often quoted "copulate the canine" expression, Sam Lancaster, whose puppet songs never saw the black of printer's ink, and Roger Katz, who knew every zip code in the U.S. If you gave him an address, he'd give you back the zip code. And also, he decided one time from the front row that he was going to call a vocal recital as if it was a hockey game. At which time he, in a stage whisper, said, "Give that lady 2 minutes for sloppy playing." After returning from Boston, Jerry began playing with the Denver Municipal Band again. That institution was to provide the opportunity for Jerry to meet, to woo, and wed his wife of 44 years, Pamela Bertoluzzi. Jerry never, as David Hickman mentioned, Jerry also got his master's degree from the University of Colorado under Frank Baird. Jerry was never a stickler for the finer details of administrative procedure and was all set to graduate except he had never taken the graduate record exam. Figuring bluff and bluster was as good as action, he accused the staff of losing his scores, and even said that he had taken the test twice, since they had lost the scores the first time. Upon further review, the staff located the never taken test scores, and Jerry did graduate. I met Jerry sometime after his graduation when I was working at Music for All, which was Denver's classical music record shop at the time. Jerry would fly in after a day of teaching trumpet students and rummage through the bins, looking for either a new release or some previously unknown trumpet record. His sense of humor, knowledge of classical music, and wealth of stories made him a favorite for me and Bob Weaver, who also worked there. Our friendship was cemented during several gatherings at Bob Weaver's cabin, which was above Evergreen, where music, gin and tonics, and marsh-wheeling cigars, as Jerry would say, the best 25-cent cigar money could buy, were combined for evenings of fun and conversation. One of my persistent memories of Jerry were his cars. His cars were a source of amazement and wonder, just because they kept going. He always said he needed a Belch-Fire V8 American-made automobile. And who had money for cars when there were so many trumpets to buy? His 56 Chev, and I'm not sure if that's 56 or 57, but I'm going to say 56, was kept running for years by a mechanic named Ralph at the local Conoco station. Jerry's first cat, by the way, was named Ralphie in honor of Ralph. Never one to worry about safety or structural integrity, Jerry drove the car for years with the motor held up by a chain because the motor mounts had rusted through. The hood was wired down after it burned to a crisp at 17th and Colorado Boulevard when the engine caught fire. Later, that same hood suddenly flew across his windshield as he was driving back from Regis College, having taught there. When the 56 Chevy finally gasped its last breath, Jerry purchased my mom's 1962 red Chevy Impala. It was almost new then, only 15 years old. Running like a trooper for several years, it finally gave up the ghost in the 7-Eleven parking lot on Colfax. Jerry just abandoned it there and walked home. However, that was the same night we had come over to make Jerry the proud owner of the Pigmobile, as we fondly referred to our Oldsmobile. Gas had shot up to the unbelievably high price of $2 a gallon, and being sensible people, my wife and I, we purchased a Fiat that got good gas mileage. Jerry loved his new car and always enjoyed reminding us of our foolishness as he continued to drive the pig and we replaced the Fiat with car after car. Somewhere around this time, Jerry and Pam decided the world would be better off with a new generation of Endsleys and decided to have children. Jerry, of course, was the doting husband, helping Pam in every way when she was pregnant with Shane. Pam, not so sure that recollection is true. And she remembers calling the doctor to report her contractions one evening and the doctor telling her to get right over to the hospital for the delivery. Jerry was watching the NBA playoff game at the time and got her to the hospital as soon as it ended. As Jerry would later say in his defense, there was only one quarter left. Shane, named for Jerry's favorite movie hero, was soon joined by Marguerite, named after Jerry's mom. And that was the end of the family growth, except for a few strays such as Shira, Maurice, Jake, and a couple of other four-legged furry felines. Remembering a person's name was not one of Jerry's strong suits. When my wife and I first were introduced to Pam, Jerry said, "And this is Bob Shaklee and his wife." was right, but anyway. If someone were to follow Jerry around for a day, he would assume that almost everyone Jerry ran into had been elected governor of the state or was an orchestra conductor. His favorite two greetings were Gov or Maestro. And first-time acquaintances often thought the name was newly minted for them. As mentioned before, Jerry had a predilection for anything related to trumpets. His collection of playable items probably numbers in the hundreds. We could ask Hollis, Pam's sister, because she polished most of them, I think. If knickknacks, ornaments, art pieces, miscellaneous other objects are included, the number would probably stand somewhere in the thousands. He collected books on trumpet and had almost every record of classical music featuring the trumpet, as well as jazz records. Of course, they had to feature the trumpet, but anyway. He published books about and music for the trumpet as Tromba Publications. He recorded and issued phonograph records of trumpet playing under Clarino Records. He manufactured natural trumpets and made custom mouthpieces on the lathes in his basement or in his garage. As Dave Hickman mentioned, Jerry often attended, performed, and sold merchandise at ITG conventions. He usually came back with a number of good stories and an important guidance from the method books offered for sale by his competitors. I remember one he found particularly enlightening was the suggestion that before starting the daily practice regimen, a trumpet player should stand erect against the wall and buzz for several minutes. We were never quite sure what that meant, but it seemed appropriate. I don't play the trumpet, so I'm not sure what was going on. Dave might be able to help us. In 1985, the city of Denver cut completely the funding for the Denver Municipal Band. It had been funding the band since 1891. After much work, Ed, Lenacek, and Jerry were able to get the city to restore 25% of the band's funding. In order to fund the complete summer program, Ed and Jerry incorporated the band as a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. They proceeded to solicit grants from local foundations and appeal to citizens to contribute to the season. In the end, they raised enough money to put on a passable season. However, for the next 30 years, Jerry would spend a good portion of his time raising funds to ensure the DMB's continued survival. Each year, he would talk to the mayor and city council persons to make sure the band got at least what they got last year and hopefully a little more. He would ask city council people if there were any events in their districts for which the band could provide musicians. He would write grant requests to foundations and businesses. He also worked hard for the passage of the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District and later for its continuation. Under Jerry's leadership, the DMB received funding from the FCFD every year and was the first organization to receive funding from every county in the FCFD. My next statement was going to talk about Jerry joining David Hickman on Summit Brass in 1985, but since Dave's covered that, I'd just like to take a minute to thank Dave for coming all this way and playing as only Dave can play. He's one of the most moving trumpet players I know, and he showed today as he did back when he recorded the Hummel with Jerry. About this time, Jerry also began a prolonged and fruitful collaboration with the Denver Center Theater Company. He was involved with most productions that included music in the performance. He played, contracted, and conducted for the center and worked closely with playwrights, composers, and producers to create the desired effect, whether it was an incidental music for a Shakespeare play or a complete score of a Broadway musical. Particular names that come to mind from those times were Kendrew Lascelles, who was a playwright, Larry Dellinger, a composer with whom Jerry frequently worked, and of course, one of his favorite actors, Jamie Horton. Jerry and Pam had frequent dinner gatherings for the cast of the shows. I had always heard that money was short right after those because of the liquor bills, but I'm not sure. Jerry did find the creative process of integrating music and theater to be particularly rewarding in his life. One of the last groups Jerry became involved with was the community or the concert band here at Metropolitan State University. It gave him great pleasure to conduct a group of musicians who played solely for the love of playing music. He'd coined a phrase for the Denver Municipal Band School program, which was, "There is nothing to it but to do it." And this group gave life to the slogan. Unfortunately, I've only scratched the surface of the life and contributions of my dear friend. I've missed Tom Horn, the pool table, Rosenstock's books, L'Histoire des Soldats, and guns, and knives, and pipes. They will all just have to wait for another time. As testimony to his spirit, look at the vitality of music and theater in Denver and realize that Jerry played an important role in creating much of it. I will miss him in the years to come, but the time we spent together and his wonderful sense of humor will always bring a smile to my face. May he rest in peace.
say a few words about Gerald Endsley as a father. And I'm happy to say that he was a great dad. He was a really great dad. And to my sister Marguerite and I, he gave us the most important things a parent can give. And that was his time and his energy. Being a father myself now, I have a new appreciation for his commitment to being a present and involved parent. He and Mom loved us without conditions, without reservations. There was never a moment we felt alone or uncared for. And our early years were filled with great memories. Family dinners in the backyard, and bike rides to the park, trip to the zoo and the museum. I think we probably paid for half of that place. Vacations in the mountains with the Lenacheks especially. And chases around the house. Days out of school. Impromptu days out of school, especially if we could stay up late enough at those theater parties to make it past 10:30, you could always get out of school the next day. And that usually included like a nice lunch and a trip to a toy store. These funny stories he could make up off the top of his head endlessly. He was so entertaining for Marguerite and I. He would sit with us and, we'd sit with a tape recorder and do fake interviews, and we had these recurring characters, and he'd make up new stories all the time, and as has been said over and over today, his quick wit and his irreverent sense of humor were such a gift to us, because we'd always ask for more stories, and there were always more. He could just make up these amazing tales off the top of his head. He really showed us a great time, and Gerald Endsley certainly excelled in the enjoyment of life, and he brought us along on that ride with him. There was work and discipline as well. He cared about passing on the things he valued most in life to his kids. He pushed us to read the classics and learn our history, to appreciate music and theater and craftsmanship. Even when I was pretty young, 6, 7 years old, we started having these heavily enforced family reading sessions, and got to put the Star Wars toys down, come downstairs and jump in on some child-friendly reading like the Iliad or Tale of Two Cities. Marguerite was probably 4, But he was such a voracious reader. The house is filled with books, and his mind was like a steel trap. He never forgot anything. And he could, I feel like he could walk into any college and teach a music history course without preparing, and he's had this amazing intellect, and he cared so much about learning and improving yourself as a person, and so it was important for us. That's why he dragged us in. He's like, all right, we're going to read and the Old West history, gunfight at the OK Corral. And he encouraged us Marguerite and I, to be creative and independent with our talents and our interests, to pursue our own individual paths. He was so amazing with that, creating this rich life in music, really creating it. No one did that for him. Like, he had to put it all together, and he wanted to show us how you can do what you love and make it your life. He showed us how to be generous, accommodating, hospitable. These are sentiments that meant a lot to him. He was really a generous person. All the work he did, he practically gave it away, probably charged nothing or half of what he should. And he was such a generous person, and he didn't care about money in that way. He just cared about the work he was doing and the people he was with. So I feel like with him, if your friend needs a ride, you give it. If they need money, you lend it. If they need food, you invite them over. And maybe you neglect to tell your wife that you invite them over, and somehow find a way to take a nap while she cleans and prepares the food. He and Mom loved each other and kept each other good company right until his last day. And she stood by him as they stood by each other for more than 40 years. And their companionship was so solid and so deep. It was always a given that Mom and Dad are really like this. And their companionship was so tender and sweet at times. About a week before Dad died, I came downstairs early in the morning, and he was awake, so I sat on the bed, we started chatting, and Mom heard us and started to turn over, and she was reaching her hand out for his, before she even opened her eyes. And he grabbed it and held it, and rubbed her shoulder, whispered some sweet words. And he could always make Mom laugh. I'll miss that. comforting sound of their conversations continuing on after dinner, Mom chuckling as Dad stoked his pipe and delivered his jokes and his asides. They always shared their love of music, music making, their marriage bonded by that shared passion. And they modeled for us a truly loyal and loving relationship. And thank you, Mom and Dad, for doing that. I chose to follow in my dad's footsteps as a trumpet player. And our connection through music is maybe the thing I will miss the most about him. Sitting in the house and playing duets together, such a special connection to have to one's father, a connection to him. I miss that, he started taking me on his jobs when I was like 10. Been playing for a year, and he'd bring me, it was like a church gig or something where I could not mess it up too bad, He always played so many things around town, all different kinds, playing at your concert hall, and then he'd be playing probably with me at like 6:30 in the morning, some golf course for like a benefit, trumpets play when the rich people get out of the car. It was all the same to him. He never had a problem with that, He was like, yeah, it's music, make a life of music, do all kinds of things. And he was so fun to be with. I play with a lot of musicians now, and most of them are not that fun in those type of jobs. Everyone's complaining, watching the clock. And he was just, he knew how to make it fun, and that was some of our best times. It's like driving to these, dumb gigs, shit gigs that we call them. But he made it special, and I'll miss his praise and his approval, his support when I would try for something or achieve something. And now that he's gone, I'm realizing how much that always meant to me. I looked up to him, and I admire him, and I'll always miss him. Rest in peace, Gerald Endsley.
The family wanted me to come out and just say thank you to Metropolitan State University for providing the facilities and also all of the support. I think it meant a great deal to them, and they're very pleased. Two other commercial announcements. The concert band is going to be giving a memorial concert for Jerry on the 5th of May at 7:30 in this same hall. And then, if you want to hear more of Shane's playing, he will be at Dazzle on Friday and Saturday night, 7:30 and 9:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's the least we could do for Jerry after all the things that Jerry did for us. I would like to read one final email, and I'd like to end with Psalm 23. I thought that this email just had a great quote in it, so I saved it for the end. And it's from Lyle Raper, a good friend of Jerry's and the stage manager at the Denver Center. I'm thinking of you lamenting the loss of dear Jerry. A man more gracious and funny didn't exist in our theater world at the DCTC. I cherish the memories of shows we did together and the amazing, wonderful dinner parties at your home on Bel Air. Wonderful food and great martinis in the company of interesting and vibrant people. Thank you for all of that. Jerry is beyond the pain of cancer now. I remember one of the August Wilson shows we did there, in which one of the characters says, "The greatest thing we do in life is draw our last breath, because in that moment we go on to join everything that has gone on before us." Jerry will always be with us, a part in each of us. He really did make the world a better place. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Somehow I think that Jerry is up there seeing all of this and smiling and laughing and enjoying the jokes, enjoying the stories. So we hope that you will join all of us out in the main street for a little reception with a lot of more stories about Jerry this evening. And thank you very much for being here. Bye-bye.